right, guys. Well, a slight change of plans here. I know we had said that Dr. Ed Lyons was going to be joining us for this episode, but long story short, his mic was not delivered to him yet. So obviously it's hard to interview somebody if they don't have a mic to record what they're saying. So Kaylee and I recorded this episode tonight, and we will have Dr. Lyons on the next episode, and I'm telling you right now, it's going to be an amazing episode. I am looking forward to this so much. Just another short introduction. If you're not familiar with what our plan is, we're going to be doing a whole series on vision. Literally anything you can think of that has to do with your eyes and shooting and making your eyes better. In and outside of shooting, that's what we're covering. So, first episode will be with Dr. Lyons. Coming out next, it'll be episode 12. He is a sports vision specialist that happens to be a shooter and understands. There's two people in the world that I would consider perfect for this podcast. One of them is Dr. Lyons. The other one is Dr. Colo. We'll have both of them on. First is going to be Dr. Lyons. We're going to follow that podcast up with some awesome stuff by Synaptech. Addendum here. Synaptech has been awesome enough to basically give us some of their product, a $1,200 version of their strobe glasses that we're going to be giving away to one of you guys. So stay tuned for that. Pay attention to our social media, and if you put it this way, if you're listening to the podcast every week and you're subscribed on YouTube and social media, Facebook, Instagram, you can't miss how to sign up for this giveaway because it'll be on all of those things. So don't miss it because it's awesome. And Dr. Lyons is going to talk about why it's so good. But without further ado, let's get into this episode. Again, just an introductory little chit-chat here with Kaylee and I, talking about how we use our eyes in shooting and having a little bit of a discussion and dialogue. So I hope you enjoy this one. Stay tuned for the next one because it's going to be amazing. They only get better. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. Please make sure to subscribe on our social media accounts. And if you don't follow us already, please do. Let your friends know. Get the word out about the podcast because we're trying to give you guys some awesome information. We're going to start doing more giveaways, and you're going to want to be involved. So cool. Thank you guys, and here we go.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode 11. David, can you believe that next week we will have a dozen episodes out?
That's pretty amazing. It was kind of surreal when we hit the double-digit episode mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now we're getting to a dozen, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, we just knew. It's like pretty much going 12 weeks almost.
Well, I'm really excited because the first thing we kicked it off with was the mental game series, and now we're going to be getting into the vision series. And within 12 episodes, I have already 2 series that we've done so far, and the guests that we've had already are amazing. I think the content that we've had so far has been really good, and I'm. For those of you listening right now, I'm in Georgia. I just finished up the Georgia State shoot at the Meadows. And, we had a lot of you guys came up to me and mentioned the podcast and told me, because Kaylee wasn't there, how much you enjoyed it.
A lot of them came up just to ask where I was.
Sure. But no, and so I appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody listening to the podcast, and We have, bigger and better plans as we go, and so just hang with us and it'll get better. But this episode is going to be good. We have to Kaylee, why don't we explain what we're doing for this episode? Because we had previously released that this was going to be Dr. Ed Lyons. So why don't we explain? Do you want me to, or do you want to?
No, so we, like you said, we're doing our Vision series, and we're kind of trying to put it together. Dr. Ed Lyons is obviously in England, so the time change is a little bit difficult to work with. Not only that, but he's a highly sought after doctor, so he's pretty busy. And on top of that, he also had ordered a microphone that we have been waiting to come on, which he just texted today and said it was in. So
yeah,
that's
I saw
exciting. That. Yes. But basically this episode, David and I are kicking off our Vision series, similar to like our mental game series, and then we are going to follow it up with some really cool guests like Dr. Ed Lyons, maybe have him on a couple times to talk about some stuff in depth, and then as well as Synaptic. I know a lot of you have heard us talk about Synaptic, so we're really excited to have them on and just give y'all some more insight on visual training, understanding the eyes, how they work, how they play into shooting, how they play into your mental game. And we're here to kick that series off.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really good.
I'm excited.
I'm actually really excited because
this is my favorite topic to talk about.
Well, it's my favorite topic, and I'm also using this as an opportunity to ask a lot of questions that I have, but then to also ask a lot of questions that have been provided to us by our students. So, I think it's going to be an extremely informative series. In fact, actually, I was teaching all day today, which is one of the reasons why we couldn't do our live at 5. We got stormed out and stuck at the club. So
it's weird that it stormed there because it stormed here too, and I lost power. I couldn't do anything.
It was a crazy storm. But that aside, today with one of my students, we spent literally 3 hours of a lesson working on eyes, working on drills with the eyes, working on learning how to use them differently, more efficiently, how that gets incorporated into the mechanics of the move, how using your eyes in a specific way influences the mechanics and then therefore needs to be kind of encompassed in a very specific mindset and control of what you're thinking consciously. It was a fun lesson, and it was just kind of, pretty much perfect timing that was what we were doing today, and that's what we're talking about tonight on the podcast, and that's what we're going to be leading into. So, it's an extremely important thing. And, we used to do this, what are you laughing about so much over there?
You're rambling on about everything.
Rambling. But no, we used to do at the youth clinics I used to do all the time with all these kids. We used to ask them, one of the first questions we would ask them was to kind of see, where their head was at in the game. We'd ask them, what is the most important tool to shooting? And a lot of them would answer,
I bet 90% answered gun.
Yeah, my chokes, my glasses, my gun. Some of them like to get extra, try to think outside the box, and they'd come up with something like, my hands or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, 100% of the time, the answer to that question, think about what are you going to be doing if you're not using your eyes correctly? The most important.
If you don't have, your eyes lead everything. So if they're not working properly, or if they don't work at all, you can't do shooting at all. And it's the number one thing that is, I know that sounds like a stupid thing to say, but if you look at it into a lot deeper, the number one thing that I would say that's missed is the eyes. They get neglected all the time. And it's the biggest component of shooting by far.
So I got a question for you. How much, obviously the eyes are important in how we use them and understanding what our own eyes are doing and everything. But in your lessons that you give, and also I want you to grade yourself on this question. How often do you see inconsistency in the way in which the student or yourself is utilizing their eyes for the start of the move? So, meaning like when you call pull, the placement, the position, the focus point, the depth of focus, the everything in which you're using your eyes. How often do you think that that all of those variables are consistent
I think,
from shot to shot of the same shot?
yeah, I think probably in the last 5 years, I don't want to say perfected because you're always learning, but I've gotten as close, I think, to my knowledge of what I have, perfecting what works for me. And that's for myself. Now, you got to look at from when I started, I didn't quite really understand the importance of the eyes, just like everybody else. You know, my eyes work, I can see it. That's all. That's pretty much the thought I put into it. You know, obviously, my dad would teach me to look at the target, not look at the gun, you know, your standard stuff. But I never got in depth into how important the eyes are and how important they are, especially in my game when it's a reaction game, to the shot and to your performance. My students, that is, you know, when I get a new student, and my students can attest to this, but when I get a new student, if they don't have like major mechanical issues, you know, I mean, obviously if they're way off track, I'll fix those things. But the first thing that I teach them is how to use their eyes. I teach them the importance of their eyes. I teach them my knowledge of the function of the eyes. I teach them, you know, a generalized placement to where they can hold their eyes. We do like a series of little tests to see, you know, are they right eye dominant? Are they left eye dominant? Do they have an issue with the target crossing or their barrels crossing when they make a move? Are they cross-eyed? You know, but the very first thing that I teach them is how to use their eyes, and then mechanics follow after that. And not in a sense is like I'm not paying any attention to mechanics. You know, if they're doing like the chicken wing or something, I'll fix that. But I always, always, always start off with the eyes. I don't even care, you know, I mean, if they were to hip shoot it, one of the demonstrations that I do is I'll take their gun and hip shoot a target or shoot it over my head and just kind of make the point that wherever the gun is, eventually, if you're using your eyes, you understand that. And so that's where I start with every student. I don't ever start with body mechanics.
So explain to me a little bit let's take the generic phrase that you said, which is how to use your eyes. How would you say that you need to use your eyes in your game?
So
do you think it's different? And do you think it's different than mine, or not?
No, I don't think it's different than yours. I think there's different techniques, because obviously most of the time, until like 10% of the shot left, you're not in the gun. So I think that there's different techniques to use your eyes, but I think holistically it's the same core value of using your eyes. Your eyes have to go first. If your eyes don't go first, you have no idea where your gun's going. You have no idea what you're shooting at. You know, I mean, would you agree with me on that? Like, you have to see the target first before you move.
So explain to people that are listening what you mean by if your eyes go first.
So the way that I teach, a lot of people, this gets a lot of controversy because sometimes I'll post videos on social media of me shooting in slow motion and the target looks as if it's way out there before I'm ever even starting my move. But realistically, it's not. It's, you know, you can put me and somebody who shoots the streak of a target, meaning as soon as they call pull and as soon as they see the flash, they think that they're leaving exactly in the same time of the target, but they're not. All they're doing is just confusing themselves, in my opinion. Like, it's super hard to get a good grip on the target if you're trying to leave with that streak. You can see the direction of the target, but you're never going to really be able to find definition on that target. So what I mean by when I say your eyes have to move first is the way that I teach is to hold a still gun wherever your start point is. Hold a still gun, let that target leave the bunker, move your eyes to the target before you ever even move your gun. So when let's say the target's a left-hand target, when that target comes out, you're initially going to see the streak of it and recognize the direction of it. Soon as you figure that out, your eyes are going to go to it, and then your gun can start the move, but your eyes are ahead. They're on the target. Your gun's going to kind of play a little bit of catch up. It's going to try to follow the same path as the target that your eyes took. And ideally, what the goal is to be able to see the direction, grab your eyes onto it, start your move, clear up the target on the move, and then shoot it. But what I mean by that is your eyes have to move before your gun.
So explain to me what happens. You used the word holistically, so I'm going to use it. Explain to me what happens in your game if your eyes and the gun leave at the same time.
So this is where the controversy comes in, because a lot, especially European coaches, teach this way. And there's a lot of people that shoot it this way, in the U.S. But in my opinion, this is hard to explain without showing a video, but in my opinion, if you were to take, let me put it this way, if you were to take a video of somebody who, let's say, is quote unquote shooting the streak, okay, and you were to take a video of me, who is somebody who keeps their gun still, lets the target out first and moves their eyes first, so doesn't try to chase the streak, okay? If you video the same target, where our guns are gonna move almost identically, even though it looks like that person that's shooting the streak feels like they're leaving right with the target. It's impossible to leave right with the target. You're always gonna get beat in my game. It is impossible to leave with the target. So the only difference is when they try to chase that streak, in my opinion, they're always somewhat kind of looking down the barrel and the target's in a background view. They never are going to be able to clear up that target. It's going to be really hard for them to clear up the target. They're always going to be chasing it. The way I shoot is to let that target out just a little bit further before you start to move. Try to see it as clear as you can, and then go to the target and move. There's not a huge difference in break time. There's not a huge difference in a start time. The way that I shoot versus somebody else, the difference is I'm able to see shadows and rings on the target while somebody else is shooting a streak and pretty much spot shooting it, because you're not ever going to really be 100% sure where everything's at. You're always going to kind of you can get really good at spot shooting, don't get me wrong. You can throw up some high scores that way, but is it a consistent way of shooting? No.
So it sounds to me like what you're trying to do is I'm going to take my filter for teaching my game and apply it to your explanation for yours. Okay, so and then tell me if I'm right or wrong. Although I'm used to hearing you tell me that I'm wrong.
Well, that's the thing with vision is, I don't think that there's
Kaylee, that was a joke.
I know, but I was saying, I don't think that there's one correct way to shoot it. I think that there's better ways for, certain people to shoot it and better ways for other people to shoot it. But from my experience I'm going to go out on a limb, and you say in your opinion, but I'm going to say it's fact. Yeah.
And because I'm okay with not sounding as nice as you. But but let me explain it in the way that I would, and tell me if I'm wrong. So I want to make sure that I understand, okay?
Okay.
So what's happening is, on one side of the aisle we have the way that you teach or the way that you shoot. And what you're doing, and so I always talk about my shooting in my teaching, like a felt connection, or in a fancier word, a proprioceptive connection, right?
That's
which
your
means
favorite
that
word.
But it is so pertinent to shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyways, basically what that means is that your eyes are giving you visual information that drives your body through your mechanics to put the gun in the right spot. Okay, so now that connection doesn't happen completely until you have a complete visual connection with the bird. Okay, so if we take by definition that the gun is going to be driven off of the use of an instinctive hand-eye coordination, such as something like proprioception, and then we also take for fact, which is science, that the best connection of proprioception is done at 100% visual acuity. What you're doing is not starting your move until you've acquired visual control of the target. Now, I didn't say 100% visual acuity on the target. I'm just saying you have control visually of the bird. So your eyes have... Yeah,
I understand where it's going, the direction it's going, probably a good idea of the height that it is. Mm-hmm. And that kind of gives me an idea on like what my plan, like to how to execute this target.
Yes. So you're not moving your gun until your eyes have started to ramp up their focus on the bird. You're starting the process of 100% visual acuity, of total lock on the bird. That process has started at the same time that your movement starts. Okay, so in my mind, what that means is that you're not starting until you have visual control of the bird, which means that your movement, be it subconsciously and proprioceptively, is going to be as efficient as possible, because you're not going to be in the process of locating the bird and acquiring visual control at the same time of which you're moving. And so if we understand the science of what's happening, if you move on a flash or if you move on a blur of the shot, you're not going to be moving as efficiently as possible, and therefore not only do you not acquire 100% your 100% visual acuity, but you're also wasting movement, because at the same time you're trying to see the bird, you're also trying to connect to it with the gun, and the two are counterintuitive. So by doing one, it hurts the other, and by doing the other, it hurts the first one.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty much that explains like what I'm doing. And somebody who is, when you hear I'm like chasing the streak, they're not doing that. They're not waiting for that process to happen. It's a little bit more rushed, because for as fast as this game is, or as fast as this game perceives itself, my game, it's really not that fast. You can slow it down. Mm-hmm. You have time to let the target out, to start understanding the target presentation, to understand the direction the target's taking, the height of the target, and for your brain to process what your eyes are feeding to it, and for it to understand the move that you need to start to generate. Somebody who chases a streak, in my opinion, is always kind of chasing it. It's more aggressive, it's more rushed, it's more tense. You'll see a lot of people really hard into the gun, and they make a really quick whippy move with their hands. That's typically somebody that you see that's chasing the streak. It's not graceful.
Yeah. Well, the thing about a move like that, and I can translate that into sporting clays, the thing about a move like that, is that it's very timing based, because if you're not in control of your eyes, go back to the definition of how it works. Your eyes control the information that control where your brain puts your hands.
Right.
So if you're not in control of your eyes very well, you're not going to put the gun in the right spot initially, or fluidly, especially fluidly. That's the biggest word. The fluidity of the move is broken, and so what ends up happening is, what you just said, what you hit on there is pretty key, because, let's say you don't get a good connection visually before you start the move mechanically. Well, what's going to happen is the bird's going to beat the eyes. Okay, so then the eyes are going to chase the bird, and then that's going to cause anxiety or tension or panic, which is going to force too much torque into the move. So the move now is an extreme version of playing catch up with the target, but then you're going to get there too fast, and you're going to have to slam on the brakes. So really what ends up happening is that, If you don't control the eyes right, your gun goes from point A to point B and stops when it gets to point B and pulls the trigger. Now, if at the time that you get to point B and pull the trigger, the target is in the corresponding spot that the lead is perfect, you're going to hit it.
Right.
But on a 99% chance that it's not, then you're not. So if your timing isn't on that day, you're going to miss. But if you learn to control your eyes and you learn to use them correctly, you can take timing out of the equation, because what ends up happening now is you're creating a connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no shot. Well, especially in my game and in your game too, targets are going different speeds, right? So our targets are set to a distance. So the speeds vary. And not only that, but the speeds vary here in Arkansas, where we have thicker air. It's more humid here versus like Colorado, where the air is really thin. They don't have to be thrown as far or as hard to get there. So they're not as fast. And if you're training, like if I were to train here in Arkansas just off spot shooting, and then I go somewhere like Colorado, I'm going to way outrun everything because my body is trained off of a timing rather than what I'm seeing. And that's a huge, that's a snowball effect right there. And then you're confused. You're like, well, I shoot really good in practice. I don't know what's going on. I feel like I'm doing the same things. And it's like, well, yeah, obviously you are. You are doing the same things, but it's not correct. And
yeah,
a lot of people think too, especially in my game, they think aggression means holding really tight onto the gun and slinging the gun as fast as you can go to get there.
Right.
That's what typically the word aggression means, right? You think somebody's being really aggressive. You think they're just really like in the gun, hammering it. They got the jets on. They're going Mach 10 to get there. But you can be aggressive in a controlled manner, meaning aggressive with your eyes and aggressive with your trigger, but a controlled move to the target based off what your eyes are feeding you.
Yeah, that's actually what I worked on today. In one of my lessons, we were working on learning to control. That is an extremely complex thing, because what you're talking about is you're unpacking. If you were to say, okay, I need you to shoot this fast.
Mm-hmm.
I need you. Let me actually use a better word. I need you to shoot this early in the flight line of the bird. Okay, take the word fast out of it. We're just shooting it early in the line of the target. Because if I say I want you to shoot it fast, I don't want the student to get the connotation of meaning that I want you to move fast to break it, right? Because as you just said, you can shoot it early or you can shoot it aggressively, but be controlled. And the control aspect comes into play with speed in relation to the bird. So the faster you are in relation to the bird, the less control you have.
Right.
Because with that, more of lack of balance and lack of an increased momentum comes into play with the movement of the gun, so the precision is lost, and again, it's all about timing. But today in my lesson, what we were doing is understanding what happens when we try to shoot a bird extremely early, right? So what happens? Well, number one, you got to get over the fact of that we're not it's not about speed and aggression, right? It's about a calm, controlled state, good eyes, a very low baseline of emotion that's not responsive to the speed of the bird. And it was really interesting to see my student work on understanding and compartmentalizing the difference between calling pull and reacting off of like a panic versus speed, because they they didn't control their eyes really well in the beginning. Like they started too let's just say like their focus was too hard or intense on a specific point on the line of the bird, and so they didn't have fluidity in the start of their eyes, so the bird kind of passed them up
rather than understanding what the target was.
Right. And so then the initial start with their mechanics is extremely fast and rigid and mechanical, robotic looking, and not connected to the bird. And then, trying to teach them basically to, coaching them through learning to calm down physically, so that they respond. So, I literally, I went to the extreme of saying, like, I want you to feel lazy on this physically. I want you to feel physically lazy, but mentally and visually alert, and, yeah, the eyes are an amazing thing, how they work. It's I really like playing your game because, I think it takes it to an extreme because it adds in the variable of unknown direction,
Yeah.
and that's cool.
Well, not only that, but for one, you have an unknown speed, you have an unknown height, you have an unknown direction, and on top of that, you have, each station is going to be different than the last station. So the left-hand target's not going to be the same left on station 1 as it is on station 2, on station 3, on station 4. They're all going to be different. But you take that, and then you're always getting beat. And not only that, but the target is coming out let me say it this way. When the target comes out, it's coming into a part of your vision that's a reaction part of your vision, right? So pretty much the bottom portion of your vision, any like on the outside corners, like the your outer portion of your vision would be your reaction. So, like we were saying the other day, if something like a snake or something slithers by your feet, you see it out of the bottom part of your vision, you react from it. It scares you. But if you see it, way out in a field and you recognize it, that's your awareness part. Well, most of the time all of the time in bunker, we're shooting targets that come into our vision from our reaction part of our vision. So it's extremely difficult, and it takes a lot of time to really hone in on that finesse of not reacting from that target and making a controlled move to it. It takes a lot of time and a lot of discipline to understand that. And I would say that's probably one of the most difficult things to learn in bunker trap is understanding how your eyes see something, what the target's doing to your eyes, how your eyes are perceiving it, how you're perceiving it, and understanding how to make a move on that target without chasing a streak. Because when that target comes into your vision, your reaction part of your vision, that's what you're doing. You're reacting from it. That's why people chase the streak. They see it, it scares them, they throw the gun at it, they move. And then you're essentially spot shooting it like we talked about. So the way I shoot it is a much more controlled way of shooting the target when all of those things are going against you.
So talk to me how I understand how not to react. Because by definition, what a reaction is almost like a non-conscious response. Mm-hmm. So how do I go about learning not to react, but instead to still be in control and almost override that response?
Well, like I said, it takes a long time to learn that, but pretty much it is repetition of not letting yourself react to that target. So when I call pull, my gun is really still. When I call pull, my eyes are focused on whatever my hold point is, and the last thing I think about is just being aware that a target is about to come out, because I don't know what I'm fixing to get. I don't know if it's going to be a straight. I don't know if it's going to be a left. I don't know if it's going to be a right. So I have to be prepared for any one of those targets to come out. So I'm just aware at the bottom part, like the front lip of the bunker. I'm aware. My eyes are ready. So when I call pull and I see the first initial flash of that target, in my pre-shot routine, that's one thing that I go over is to not react off that first flash of the target. I'm just trying to be aware of it. And that's very difficult to do. But with repetition, you can do that. It's pretty easy to do that when you've been doing it for a while. So I don't know how to explain it to you without actually showing you, but that's what you have to do. Gun still, eyes have to go first. You have to be mentally prepared when you call pull because it comes out in less than half of a second. I mean, it's an instant. Whenever you call pull, it's coming out. So you can't have anything lagging on your end. Pre-shot routine, hold point, nothing can be lagging. You have to be ready when you call pull.
Yeah, I would say, if to answer that question, You gotta unpack the question of why am I responding? Why is my instinct to go? And generally it's panic to stay in control because the target's getting away.
Yeah, you feel like you're getting beat on it because you are getting beat. So that's why I say you have to be in a controlled move to it.
Right. And so what I'm saying is, because here's the thing, like I get a lot of lessons of people, where we're trying to control eyes and we're trying to control and learn to control emotion during the shot, right? Because with the eyes, so much of it is controlling emotion so that the eyes don't panic, so that the body doesn't panic, so that you can stay in control mechanically and physically with the gun. So the question is, why is it so hard for a student to, when you say, all right, when this bird comes out, I want you to move slow. I want you to move, like in the clinic in the game board clinic that I just had this morning, and the day before, my favorite type of target to take people to is a quartering bird, okay? Because when we learn how to work the eyes and how that influences the body and the gun, and you look at a shot that's quartering away, especially like a really fast, high spring quartering away target, it's hauling out there, right? And so when we see the bird and the bird takes off, we go, whoa, and we react to go fast to it. And so the gun moves fast, and if the gun's moving fast, there's a 99.99% probability that it's moving a lot. But on a bird that's quartering away, the movement isn't a lot because most of that movement is going away. So when we understand the separation of perceived speed of the bird, so like let's take your targets, Kaylee. How fast do they go? 70 miles an hour?
Yeah, 65
yeah,
to
on
70.
Average.
On average, yeah.
Yeah, on average, 67 miles an hour, let's say. 67 miles an hour. Does the end of your gun have to go 67 miles an hour? No. Because I would say if it's a straightaway bird, if you get the center bird, that's say the center 3-meter bird. Okay, so a 3-meter bird is probably, what would you say, about a 45-degree angle off the ground, like high?
Yeah, probably.
Probably around there.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so if it's a 45-degree angle going straight away, and it's going 70 miles per hour, let's say. Okay, 45-degree angles means 50%. Okay, so 50% of the speed is going up. The other 50% of the speed is going straight away. You can't move straight away, so you can only move up. So right off the bat, you just cut the speed of how fast you can move to half of the speed of the bird. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you respond to how fast it looks, you're going to move a lot faster. And that very sentence right there, if you respond to how fast it looks, means your eyes. If you allow your eyes to let you respond instinctively without staying in control, like Kaylee was talking about, not reacting to that part of your vision. If you do that, you've lost control already, and you're going to miss the shot probably. There's a high probability of it. But if you understand and learn how to control that, you got to learn why. Why do you react that way? And I think, I might be wrong. You can tell me if I'm wrong, Kaylee, but I think that it's value. I think that if you really didn't care about hitting the bird, why would you panic to go after it? So understand, for me, the way that I logically deduce it when I'm shooting is I got to reassign the value. I got to reassign the value to the connection and the control of the bird, not the result of the shot. And if I do that, it allows me to respond slow and to respond in control. And everybody's going to have their own filter, but for me, that's mine.
Yeah, I think that putting value on the shot, people do that and they don't realize that they're doing that. I would say that that's probably most commonly what's happening. But what I see a lot of times is people who, especially because I coach a lot of kids, younger kids, so kids that are trying bunker for the first time and maybe even shooting for the first time, they don't really understand exactly what's going on. They might not have any expectations of, like, perfect example. Last year I was coaching this kid. He's 15 years old. He's 16 now. And he comes up to me and he said, I don't care if I hit a single target all lesson. I just want to learn what I'm doing. He said, I want to learn how to shoot this game. He said, I don't care if I come to you for a year and I never hit a target, but I want to learn the right fundamentals, the right way to do it. And I said, perfect. Like, I like this kid. That's the easiest kid to coach. Like, he's coming to me willing to learn. So if you take a kid like that who doesn't care if they're hitting them or if they're missing them, and he is reacting like we're talking about from a target, I think it's just truly, when he sees something, he's doing it to his best knowledge. He doesn't have any understanding of the game. He doesn't have any understanding of target presentation. He doesn't understand exactly like what his brain, the information his brain is getting from what he's seeing. And the information what he's getting is, oh my gosh, that target's, he's having an emotional reaction from it, essentially, right? Like, that target comes flying out, it's a 45-degree left, it hauls butt to the left, and he's like, oh my gosh, that thing's fast, and he takes his gun and he slings it at it, right? So is he placing value on it, or does he truly just not have any idea what's going on, and he's trying to shoot that target to the best that he knows how to shoot it? Because if I were to watch Bunker and not know anything about it, my first thought would initially be, wow, you have to go super fast to hit that target. That thing's going like 70 miles an hour, right? But if you sit there and you think about it logically and you put math behind it, you put science behind it, your barrel, like you were explaining earlier, doesn't need to move 70 miles an hour to catch up with that target. There's no need for that. But on first glance, you're not going to sit there and put that much thought into that target, right? You're just unaware. You're uneducated about what's actually happening here. So I think it differs from different shooters because, if you've shot some, you can place value on that shot of just, like, have an emotional reaction to it or have value on that shot. Like, I really don't want to miss. There's people watching, and you can have that type of reaction, or you can have a reaction that's you just truly do not know what's going on. You don't care if you hit the target, but you just truly have no idea what's going on here.
You're right. So let me ask you some questions.
Okay. I think that would be a cool topic to ask Dr. Lyons about too.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. What do you want to talk about eye dominancy at all?
I think we should save like those in-depth things for Dr. Lyons, because I'd be really interested. I have a lot of questions, and we got a lot of questions from the listeners and stuff too for him. I mean, we have like 7 or 8 emails of people from questions for him talking about eye dominancy and vision deterioration, all kinds of stuff.
Okay. I want to talk about hydration. I want to talk about visual training. I want to talk about, for you, if you see a difference between visual acuity and visual discipline. I want to talk about how and when the process of your focus happens, meaning like how you go, or even if you use something like a soft focus to hard focus, and things like that. Okay. So let's talk about something easy. Tell me a little bit about your journey in understanding the importance of like hydration and nutrition in terms of how it influences the eyes.
Well, obviously those are super important things. If you're not taking care of your body, giving it the fuel it needs to operate properly, it's not going to operate properly. I think staying hydrated and your eating habits play a huge role into how any part of your body performs. But the first thing to go when you're dehydrated is your eyes. It's the first muscle to go. I think. I'll have to ask Dr. Lyons about that, but that's what I've always been told. But so if you're not keeping up with those things, I mean, it has a huge impact on how you're going to see the targets, how fast your eyes can be, how reactive they are. Basically, you have to look at it and say, am I putting in my body what I want out of my body? So if I'm expecting my eyes to work as hard as I need them to work all day long, am I fueling them for that? Most of the time, people are going to say no. You know, they're going to think that it's not going to be something that's on their agenda to do. You know, they're focused on, you know, body position or hand position or something mechanical. But like I said earlier, the eyes get neglected so much. It's a vital thing that you need to be able to have all those other things be in the proper order. So yeah, it's a huge part, nutrition and hydration.
So what kind of things do you incorporate that into your like in-game routine? I mean, how early do you worry about stuff like that?
I don't, I used to be the type of person before I fully understood the impact it has on your game. I used to be the type of person that the day of shooting, I would think I could drink 12 bottles of water and stay hydrated and be good.
Right.
And only do that for the duration of the shoot. I would eat healthy. I would eat good snacks. I wouldn't eat chips. I would, be on a pretty lean diet, as you could say, but only for about 5 days when the shoot was. Looking back, that's pretty stupid because it takes about 4 to 5 days for your body to like adjust to new things going on. So really my body wasn't even able to use the things that I was doing for it, aside from the water and the hydration part of it. But aside from the things I was putting in my body that I thought were helping, were really not helping. So I have now changed my lifestyle. And we talked a little bit about this in the middle game series. It has to become a lifestyle, not just something you do for a shoot. And same thing goes with visual training. Same thing goes with hydration, nutrition. All of it comes into play as in a whole package. And I made that switch a couple years ago. So, once I figured out that what I was doing at a shoot wasn't necessarily helping me any, my bad habits were my bad habits, and they're not going to help me at a shoot for 4 days, of me
right
doing things quote unquote right. But I made the switch a couple years ago, and now it's a lifestyle. I drink a bunch of water every day because, like I said, the eyes are the first thing to go. I work my eyes really hard every day. I work them either with the synaptic training, visual training. I work them in when I'm coaching, and I work them in my own training. So they get a workout every day, just like the rest of my body.
So wait, let's pause that right there. Explain to me. So because people are going to say, well, what does she do? I want to know what she does. Is that something you want to talk about?
No, I'm going to save that for when Synaptic's on.
Why?
Because we're going to have them on as a
guest. How about what you do in your training?
Well, that's what I was talking about earlier, is whenever you're expecting your eyes to work as hard as they need to work to be able to see the target, to not react from the target, to be able to be aware of the target, to latch onto the target, to hold, what was the word you said earlier?
Which word?
I don't remember what you said.
I've said lots of words.
I know.
Proprioception?
No.
A connection?
Visual
acuity. Lock?
Visual acuity.
Or
something like that. For my eyes...
Visual control, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. For me, okay. Yeah, visual control. For me to have visual control, my eyes need to be in top shape. Okay, they need to be warmed up. They need to be hydrated. They need to have the correct lenses on for them, so I'm not squinting or my eyes aren't, like huge trying to see the target through too dark of glasses. There's a lot of things that you have to prepare for your eyes to be able to work. And then not only that, but the nutrition and the hydration have to come into play too, because I'm asking my eyes to do a lot. Okay, I'm asking them to not react, which I feel like is a natural reaction when something comes from the bottom part of your vision, like my target does. Don't react from that target. Instead, try to figure out the path that that target's taking, lock onto that target. Not only lock onto that target, but try to find definition onto that target so I can see where I'm going. And then as you're making your move through the shot, hold on to that target all the way through your shot. And if people are listening and thinking, wow, that's a lot of work for one shot. Like, yeah, that's a lot of work for one shot. And I have to do it 250 times in a match. Okay, so my eyes work really hard in a day of shooting. So for me to be able to perform that way in a shoot, I have to train them 3 times as hard just in training so they can last in a shoot. I don't want to get fatigued when I've been shooting 100 targets and then I have to turn around and shoot a 50 bird final and work that hard. You've been out in the sun all day, you're hungry, whatever's going on. All of those things play into a factor whenever you are asking your eyes to work as hard as they need to work to be able to shoot.
So what kind of things do you do in training out, like target, like shooting? What do you do to train your eyes?
Well, I use the synaptic glasses, but mostly when I say I'm working my eyes, I work them every shot. Okay, when I'm practicing a move, I'm working my eyes too. So when I call pull, I'm trying to get my eyes to the target as fast as I can. And that's a workout for my eyes. That's going from point A to point B very quick. And what I want them to do is go from point A to point B very quick, but also be able to track and lock on and see definition on a target. So when I shoot, I'm not just shooting just to shoot. Like, that's an eye workout and that's an eye training for me. Sometimes I'll shoot targets, or I won't even shoot a target. Sometimes I just go out there with an empty gun and call pull and watch targets just to work my eyes.
So what kind of things have you found? And this could literally be like external things. It could be food or water. It could be sleep, or it can literally be anything. It could be emotional state. It could be anything. Okay. What kind of things have you found that allow you to go from point A to point B with your eyes and see clarity quicker? And I mean, and this is also a question for you because I don't know the answer in your game. Is seeing clarity too early a problem or no?
No, never. You're always trying to, because the game is so fast, you're always trying to see the bird as clear as you can, as fast as you can. Now, does that mean you should, let's say for some reason you have like bionic eyes and you can see it just totally clear right out the gate, should you make the move and just hammer it right there? Well, I mean, my point of view is when it's clear to you, shoot the target, pull the trigger. There's no need to ride that target out because it feels like it's too soon. Whatever, that goes back to shooting off of timing. You don't want to shoot off of timing. You want to shoot off what your vision is telling you. So if you can see the target 15 yards out of the bunker, which, let me just be clear, nobody can do that. Nobody can have that clear of a control on the target. But whenever the target is clear for you is when you need to be shooting the target.
So you would say that the moment that you establish the highest level of clarity on the bird, is that also the moment that you tried to shoot the bird? Or do you establish, is the moment that you establish the highest level of visual clarity on the bird prior to shooting the bird, and that's kind of like, how soon after that moment are you pulling the trigger?
Ideally, if everything goes right, whenever the target clears up, I should be able to swing through the target and pull the trigger. But sometimes, that doesn't always play out like you want it to. So you obviously have to take into fact of, well, where's my gun at? 'Cause sometimes you get beat by the target. No matter how much you prepare yourself for that target coming out, sometimes things just don't go as planned. But
well, let's talk in an ideal situation.
okay, ideal situation would be call pull. You see the flash of the target. Let's say this target is a left-hand target. You see the flash of a left-hand target. You recognize that it's a left-hand target. Hey, the target is probably, I don't know, I'm going to need to measure this before I start throwing out numbers, but let's say target starts to clear your barrel now. It's kind of past your barrel before you see it. You recognize that it's a left, it's going there. You get your eyes over to it. It's still on the move. Your eyes are now not focused on the target, but they're trying to get to the target to lock on. You understand the flight path of the target now, the height of the target now, and that's when you can start your gun movement. Okay? As your gun starts to move, your target is clearing up with your eyes. Ideally, whenever you have a full lock on that target and you can find definition on that target, your gun should be there and you should pull the trigger, ideally. Can you get visual clarity every single time? No. But you should be working your eyes as hard as if you could see visual clarity every single time.
So another question for you then, in a perfect world for you, 100% visual clarity equals breakpoint, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so can you do you delay the process at which you try to establish visual clarity at all? Like, do you hold a focus or keep the bird in the optical center of your vision at all for a little while you try to establish clarity? Or let me frame this in the opposite way. If you tried to, is there any possibility that you can try to start to establish visual clarity earlier so that you would see it before you would be able to shoot it?
That kind of goes back to, because let me put it this way, there's a sweet spot when you shoot the way that I shoot. So the sweet spot would be what I just described. It's very easy to leave too soon or to leave too late. And
with your eyes or the gun?
With the gun. So
okay.
I'm going to explain all this. So let's take the situation I just described. Okay, how I'm seeing the target, this left-hand target. And let's say I start my move when my eyes jump over to the target. When they recognize that it's a left and they jump over to try to get fixated on that target. So let's say that my gun moves now with my eyes when I'm going to that target, which would be chasing the streak pretty much. Now, my eyes have started in a direction to the target, but there's something else coming into play now. Okay, now they can see, because we shoot pre-mounted, now they can see the gun right here the whole time. So by not allowing your eyes to fully understand what's going, or let me rephrase that, by not allowing your brain to fully understand what's going on because you've interrupted your vision here, now you're playing the chase game. So is that target ever going to clear up? Maybe, but probably not. You're going to be chasing it. Okay, so then we have a second scenario. So let's say our gun stays still, we call pull, the target goes out, our eyes go with the target, and we wait until it's fully clear before we start our move. Now we've got a huge gap to make up because that target's hauling butt out there. It's going 70 miles an hour. So we wait until the target's cleared up. Now we have this huge gap to make up, which essentially is doing the same thing as leaving too early. Now we have to sling the gun in there. The gun comes into our vision super quick, and your eyes probably leave the target and go to the gun. So that doesn't really answer your question, but my point is there's a sweet spot to find it, and my sweet spot is going to be a different timing than your sweet spot. So my eyes are going to work differently than how your eyes are going to work. Are you able to clear it up quicker than I am? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But the goal is to clear it up as quick as you can, as controlled as you can, as quick as you can, and be able to pull the trigger whenever it's clear to you. Is that going to be faster for you than it is for somebody else? Maybe. But that's why you don't want to go off of timing, because if I'm telling somebody to shoot off of timing, like you should be pulling the trigger right now, well, their eyes are not going to be fully trained like my eyes are. So they may still be wondering, like, where the heck's the target? I don't really understand what I'm going for. And they're just going to be pulling the trigger just to pull the trigger off of timing. That's what you want to avoid. So I don't even really remember what your question was, but
my question was
the timing of that, like being able to clear it up quicker, that's always the goal. But is somebody going to be able to do that? It's going to take a lot of training for them to understand how to do that in a controlled manner.
Yeah, my question was framed around a thing that I have to do a lot in sporting clays, where if I just, let's say I want to decide, so there's like multiple parts for when I decide my plan to shoot a target. The first thing I want to decide is where I want to shoot it, okay? And that's based on, we can do a whole nother podcast on that, but let's just say I decide my break point, okay? And let's say that, so from then, I want to apply the mechanics that I know to hit the bird. One of those being the fact that my mount needs to complete at the break point, okay? So that's part 2. Mount completes at the break point. You decide the break point is part 1. Part 3 is I need to understand how long it takes me to go through the process of acquiring 100% visual acuity on the bird, 100% detail on the bird for me. Once I determine how long that process takes, that tells me where to start that process along the line of the bird, because I want to make that point part 3, and I want to overlay 100% visual acuity for the first moment in time. So the moment that I see the bird with 100% detail is also supposed to be the moment that my mount completes, which is also supposed to be my break point. And what that allows me to do is have a fully controlled instinctive move, the lowest amount of barrel awareness, and the highest amount of visual acuity. Those 3 things together work really well. So there's some times on a bird in my game where if I were to start to try to see the bird as good as I possibly can, as soon as I call pull and it starts to fly, I would probably get, and this is why I say some birds, because not everyone, but I would probably get to 100% visual acuity on the target prior to finishing my mount and prior to my break point. And that presents a problem, because then I got to either hold that position visually. I need to be able to maintain visual acuity for a longer period of time. Or I need to commit to breaking the target there, which is also a problem because my mount has not been completed. So I can't do that. So I'm stuck to, I'm married to the position of having to hold visual acuity on the bird, which can only happen for so long. So I'm asking that question because I'm curious to know in your game for you, if on certain days or on certain targets or certain schemes that is the process for you, as soon as I see movement, start the process of acquiring 100% visual acuity? Because
for sure. Because it's different, because no matter, even if you know the scheme, you don't know the order of the scheme. So for me, the difference in like what you're describing and what I'm describing, we're doing the same thing but in a different timing. And I don't have the luxury of being able to walk up to a station and view the targets and set out my whole plan for it. All of my planning has to be done for 3 different scenarios every single time. So you take that into account, you take that you're getting beat every time into account. The goal is to always try to have that clarity as soon as you can. Yeah, I can't obviously walk up to a station and say, okay, I would like a straightaway today on this one, first target, and I'm going to
Right.
set up right here, because then it would be a different process. If I knew where it was going, I wouldn't shoot pre-mounted. I would have a different hold point for my gun. I would have a different hold point for my eyes, and things would be approached a lot differently, more like a sporting clays approach or a feed task approach, rather than a fully mounted approach having to chase down the bird.
Interesting. So, with that, do you think that visual discipline is, if I were, I'm not asking this to trick you. I'm asking this because I need to know if you and I have the same definition for these two words. Okay. What would be your definition of visual acuity?
I mean, my definition of visual acuity, I'm probably going to take like more of a holistic approach than you are. I don't know, you may take the same holistic approach, but for me, visual acuity is more of understanding what you're seeing, if that makes sense. So I would rather somebody be more visually disciplined than mechanically disciplined. I would rather them have a more holistic understanding of what's happening visually than what's happening mechanically. Now, not to say like that mechanics aren't going to cause a miss or cause a problem if you're doing everything else right, but I would rather my students understand everything that's going on visually first. If that makes sense.
Well, let me give you my definition for visual acuity.
Well,
okay.
I have a bunch of things. Go ahead. I have a bunch of things that would fall under visual acuity for me, but go ahead.
Okay, so my definition of visual acuity is detail.
Yeah, a holistic understand. For me, it's I'm saying the same thing. A holistic understanding of what you're seeing. So
you like the word holistic.
You like the word proprioception. We use it every podcast.
Okay, so for me, visual acuity means how much detail do you see on the target? Okay. What would be your definition of visual discipline? What would you think that would mean? Because
in my game or in general?
Well, in shooting.
Because visual discipline in your game is going to mean something than visual discipline in my game. So that's
Say that again.
Visual discipline is going to mean something different how you teach and how you shoot than what it means to how I teach and how I shoot in my game. It's going to be two different things. So
what way?
Visual acuity in my game doesn't always mean detail on the target. It means that's why I said I would take like a holistic approach to it. It means understanding, when that first initial flash comes out, understanding the direction of the target, then trying to understand the height of the target, the flight, the path that the target's taking, then trying to clear it up, then trying to see detail. There's like a bunch of steps that I would put under visual acuity. Visual discipline in my game would mean understanding your visual acuity definition, okay, understanding all of the things that fall under that to what we're working on. And visual discipline would be able to say, am I able to implement what I'm trying to do and execute what I'm trying to do every single shot? Can I be that disciplined every single shot? Because are your eyes able to see it every shot? Disregarding if you have a vision problem, which we'll get into that with Dr. Lyons, but say, we're in an ideal situation here. Are your eyes able to see that target? Yes. Visual discipline, I would think, would mean, well, in my game, means, are you setting your eyes up every single time to give them the best chance to see it like that every single time? Being disciplined on making your eyes move first every single time. Being disciplined on not reacting from the streak every single time. There's a bunch of different things that fall under those categories. So it's more of a loaded question, because I think in your game, there's a different approach to visual discipline than there is in my game.
What do you mean? So what would be the difference?
I would think some differences would be maybe hold points. I would think how you move, because most of the time you're shooting pairs, so how your eyes are transitioning to different targets. Your start points of your vision, meaning, the whole time, are you looking at the machine trying to have a hard focus on it, or do you have a soft focus and then it turns into a hard focus? And I think there's just like different, not saying that it's not the same thing. The goal's not the same. The goal's always the same, but I think there's different approaches between the different games to get there.
So I would call visual acuity how much definition you see on the bird, and I would call visual discipline, I would say that would be like how it's very similar to your definition of it, but just slightly different. For me, it would be how well can you control your eyes during the shot? How do they respond to panic mode, or are you able to keep the ocular center of your your eyeballs on the bird? So visual discipline is how well can your eyes track the target. Visual acuity for me is how well can they see the detail on the target.
Yeah.
So because the name of what that is, I guess in a way is irrelevant, but the idea of what those two things are is not irrelevant. For you, in your game, what do you think is more important?
Out of the two
how well
of
you
those?
see how well you see the detail on the target, or how well your eyes can stay on the target?
I don't think there's a correct answer there. I think both are extremely important. I think if you're lagging in one, then you should work on that, because both are really important. And I think you can get to a point to where you can train your eye muscle to either see it better or track it better or whatever the problem is. But you have to be able to, the thing you have to realize is not every shot's going to be perfect. I mean, you're rarely going to have a perfect shot. Just think, if it's rainy and cloudy, you're probably not going to be able to clear it up. You're not going to be able to see definition on the target, more than likely. It's going to look like a tiny, in my game, it's going to look like a tiny aspirin shooting across the sky. So if you're looking at it in that sense, then tracking would be better, because you'd be able to track the target no matter if you saw clarity on it or not. But if you're talking about an ideal situation, there's not a right or wrong thing there, because for some reason, there's also, a bunch of times that I can name, and it probably happens every shoot, that I get, no matter how much I prepare, I get beat, even though I've made my eyes do what I want them to do. Sometimes I don't execute it. So I get beat out, and then the target just appears over here and it's clear, and I see it, and I can make my move to it. So did I track it very well? No, but I saw it clear and I was able to go to it and shoot it. So to say that one outweighs the other, I don't think it does, because I think both need to be really strong fields, because when you're shooting bunker trap, especially in bunker trap, rarely ever do you have a round that you have 10 to 15 perfect shots. You just rarely ever hear somebody come off the line and say, man, I saw every single one of those and just hammered them. That's rare to hear. Sometimes it happens, but it's really rare. So to say one outweighs the other, I don't think it does. I think both come into play at different times, and ideally you would have both of them working in sync with each other.
Yeah, I would agree with you. If we're talking about you, like let's say, what's more important for Kaylee Browning? Kaylee Browning's visual acuity or Kaylee Browning's visual discipline? I would say that the two are going to feed off of each other. So the better visual discipline you have, the better visual acuity you will have for you, right? Obviously, like the better that you can keep your eyes on the bird as it's moving, the more definition you're going to see.
Right.
How about, let's put this into perspective do you ever get people that say, well, like, I can't see the target as good as you can. How am I ever going to shoot that good? Right. So how about for you versus me? Okay. Like, let's say, I only mean that in like, if I don't see the target, if I don't see as much detail as you do on the target, but my visual discipline is just as good. Like if I can, let's say I'm a 65-year-old version of me and I can't see as good detail. I can't see the rings. I can't see the shadow on the clay.
Mm-hmm.
If I can still have the visual discipline to be able to keep my eyes on the bird and to control where I'm looking and to not panic, is that good enough in your opinion? Or do I need to be able to, like, does it hurt me that I can't see the detail?
No, that's good enough, because that's like I was talking about earlier. On cloudy days, you're not going to be able to see detail. Even I'm not going to be able to see detail. So that comes back into the process of trusting what you're doing and understanding, not every time you're going to be able to clear the target up, because you're not going to be able to every time to clear the target up. So you take somebody that's older, that, let's say the roles are reversed, where most of the time I'm able to clear the target up, but you take somebody who's a little bit older, let's say very rarely are they able to clear the target up, or maybe not even ever are they able to clear the target up. So yes, tracking it, and as you're saying, visual discipline comes into play there, but they also have to understand some level of visual acuity to them, what their clarity is. Clarity doesn't have to mean I see detail, I see shadows, I see rings, I see something on the target. I can tell you exactly where I hit the target. Clarity to me means in the sense that you saw it as good as you could see it. You felt like you had a really good grasp on that target, whether that means seeing detail or that means you see orange in the air, but you saw it better than when you started. So you kind of have to understand what definition of clarity you're going after here, because you take somebody who's 65 years old and somebody who's 14 years old and they've got excellent eyes. Their clarity is going to be different, probably. So you have to look at it in that form, especially from a coach's standpoint, because I'm going to take that into consideration if I'm coaching somebody who's older and who's telling me I can't see it, I can't see detail on it. So then we go into, okay, well, let's work on your tracking if that's the issue. Let's scoot up closer to the target. I want you to try to see it as best as you can. I want you to tell me where you see it the best. And wherever you see it the best, that's where I want you to try to work towards for your break point. So you have to take every person in. I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do it, because every person is going to be different. I don't coach one person that's the same, that sees the same. Just like I don't think any one person sees the same.
Yeah. I would say the really cool thing about vision is that, like, I'm asking you these questions, so they're framed in the way that I interpret and that I teach it. So, it might be different for you. And if it is, obviously you gave your definition of the compartmentalization of it. But I simplify vision down to those two things. In terms of shooting. And the cool thing about it is, obviously we want to improve vision when we're shooting, right? So if we wanted to improve visual acuity, obviously people have their limits based off of luck and how they were born, obviously.
And their understanding of the target, or understanding of their vision.
Yeah, and how to use it, yeah. And so, but, I think that this is a 100% true statement. Everybody can see it as good as they can see it, right?
Right.
Very simple statement there. I can be looking at the target 50% and see 50% as much detail as I actually can see, but there's an ultimatum in terms of how much I can possibly see. So what can I possibly do to make that number, my 100% of visual acuity, better? And, there's a lot of things that's, genetic and situational, and that happens through life and exposure to certain things. But nutrition and hydration increase that top end. Like if you take care of that part of your body, you will see improvements in it. Okay. But then take the other side of it, which is the visual discipline portion. And you say, well, how do I improve that? Because that's also very important. And I think it's arguably more important. My definition of what visual discipline is probably more important than what my definition of what visual acuity is. And so if you wanted to improve that, well, it's cool because you can. You can use eye exercises. You can use these things that Synaptic has. You can, use training drills out on the course, or for you, the bunker. For me, one of the things I used to always do when I was practicing is train to find my minimum in terms of how quickly I can shoot a bird and stay in control. Yeah. And then what can I do to push that further and further and further, so that I'm forcing my eyes to establish my visual acuity to 100% as quickly as possible, and pair that perfectly with my mechanics. And this was all before I knew about what Synaptic has, with
That's
the
funny.
sensory training. And
I used to do that same drill. Like I would take, quote unquote steps to break in the target, where it's like eyes move first, you see the target, blah, blah, whatever. I would take that and make it as slow as I could possibly go, and just try to learn the steps of the move to the target, the process of the breaking the target, like the ideal process. And then I would...
The visual process, right?
I would... no, visual, and how that contributed into my move.
And mechanical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would take that, because my move has to be controlled too. Even though as fast as it seems, you have to have a controlled, aggressive move. So...
I would hope so.
Yeah, I would take that and I would work on it for like a week, and then I would vamp it up a little bit because I got good at that. And then I would, get a little bit faster and get a little bit faster and get a little bit faster. And what I was doing is I was getting faster, yes, but I was able to do the process quicker and still be in control, until eventually I got to an ideal point of where I like to shoot it.
Yeah.
Which is in control but aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the cool thing about being in control but aggressive is that if you're let's replace aggressive with, not because you're wrong, but just for a different terminology, let's replace aggressive with early. In control but early. The cool thing is that if that happens, you don't give yourself a chance to make a conscious decision to do something wrong.
Exactly. And that's what you want to avoid. You definitely want to, especially in my game, especially in your game too, because you're, sometimes you have a really long time before you take the shot. You see the target for a long time. So you have a lot of time to, especially on like crow birds or something, like incomers, you have a lot of time to sit there and kind of like plan out what you want to do. And that's really what you want to avoid. You don't want to give yourself the opportunity to overthink it, I guess. Like come into play and like let your mind take over of what you got going on there.
Yeah, it's really interesting, like the dichotomy of incoming birds versus I just made up a new word, an ingoer and an outcomer. let's just say, the dichotomy of an incoming bird versus an outgoing bird. On an incoming bird, let's do it the other way around. On an outgoing bird, there's no time to process something consciously. Like it happens, right? If you do it right, it happens. And you can simplify the move into a purely instinctive reaction that's totally in control, both visually, mentally, and mechanically. But that happens so quickly that there's no chance to make a conscious decision to go off, right? Now, the question, that's very hard to do because there's so many variables involved in that are very complicated and complex and all these other different things. So learning that process is hard, but then take the complete opposite and give yourself a bird that's coming in. Well, you're not going to shoot it as quickly as possible because it's coming in, right? Mm-hmm. So now we have something where the mechanics are still just as important of a thing, obviously, because they're mechanics. But on top of that now, we've totally changed the game in terms of the mental and the visual, because we have something that gives us time to consciously have a thought process, and that gives us time to do something with our eyes that we may not want to. Yeah. And so what do you do mentally to not allow that to happen? That's very, that's a complex question. That's that's both a philosophical and a psychological question. It's a totally different game. It's really interesting. It's really fun to play around with those two things because they're two different mindsets. Like you would say, you could simplify them down into what these two phrases give you in terms of an emotional response. Like, oh, here it comes, and there it goes. One's panic, one's relaxation. But the panic is hard because it forces a lack of control, and the relaxation is hard because it promotes undisciplined thought process and an undisciplined visual process, I guess you could say. So those two different things are interesting. We'll have to talk, to Dr. Lyons about that. And I would love to have, Dr. Colo on too after all this as part of the Vision series.
Yeah, it'd be cool to get both of their opinions on things.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see kind of some of the topics that we've talked about today, and then add on some of the topics that we've got from listeners and bring them up to Dr. Lyons and see, either how far off we are, just like the other day, Dr. Matt Zanis that we had on told me that I've been squatting wrong my whole life. I've been squatting wrong my whole life. And here I was, I thought I had good form. So I told everything I told you today could just be totally wrong. He's probably about to prove completely wrong. It's like you're doing it wrong your whole life. That's what I've been told. But I'm interested to see what all he says, and it'd be fun to talk to him about it.
Yeah, it'll be cool. Good deal. Do you have anything to add?
Sounds good to me. We'll get him on.
Do you have any questions for me?
No, I think we're pretty similar. We do the same thing, just in different sports. Just structured a little bit different, but the goal is always the same for both of us.
Cool. Well, why don't we end it there?
Sounds good.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, Kaylee. And I guess we'll, everybody, let's look forward to getting Dr. Lyons on, and we'll record him this week and post it on the next episode. It would be episode. Actually, Kaylee, 12. We totally messed up. Yeah. Well, yeah. His will be 12. I was thinking that we were saying this one was 12, but this one's 11.
Yeah. I was saying next week will be 1 dozen.
Right. Very cool. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, guys, for listening. We appreciate it.
See you next week.